signs are different. This one tells us our larger number. So now you're just looking for your factor pairs. I think they call this the rainbow method. So that's 36. We got 1 and 36. 2 and 18. We're trying to get that 5. So 3 and 12. 4 and 9er. So the larger number was negative. So 9 goes here. 4 goes here. But when you have an A term, and this is kind of, I don't know the rationale behind it. If you divide by your A term, you get x minus 3, x plus 4 thirds. So your zeros are 3 and negative 4 thirds. So whether the A is there or not, you'd either divide by 1 or divide by 3. I mean, I've never had a kid have problems with it. When we went to that box method, and you're putting in 3x squared here and negative 12, and you had to come up with the terms here. That's, I mean, they had problems with this because do I use the box?
Okay, what happens when we go to Algebra 2 and we have to factor to have, like, polynomial division?
Because
Yeah.
if we're just finding the zeros, then
Yeah.
this is all they would need to know.
So why you divide by 3, that tells you where your coefficient is going to be. So if you look at...
You could bring this back out and put it there at 3. But this worked every time. And what I tell my kids, there's 4 steps. The parentheses, the x, the signs, the numbers, you're done. And so
That's pretty amazing.
we don't have to do any check or guess. We don't have to do any of those other methods. And it works well with the 8 if you're just trying to find your zeros.
When I reviewed factoring with my pre-cal kids, I tried to show them. I showed them the grouping method first, and then I showed them the
Box.
not the box. Basically, I call it the logic method because I hate guess and check because you have to intuitively think through it.
Right.
They hated the grouping method. They thought it was a waste of time, that there was way too many steps, that they could figure out what 2 things needed to be, So if you only teach the grouping method, then that's all they know going up through. When they get to be more comfortable with their multiplication skills and the factoring process, then it's almost like you're wasting time. So
I don't know. The grouping, I remember being so excited when I was, I don't know,
Well, I mean, the freshmen, they
40,
get it.
and I found out there was a different way than the logic
Right.
method.
No,
I was like, oh my God, this is perfect.
I only factored one way, like, my entire life, and then somebody showed me a box, and then somebody showed me grouping, and I'm like, wait, what? What is going on?
Yeah, the guess and check I can never do because there's just so many combinations.
Well, to teach kids that, you
And
have to have that
they have to,
math.
they have to have it.
And that they're still going to have that kind of sense with this because they're going to have to figure out factor pairs.
But
Yes,
that's
we
only
need
one
to
number, not 2.
Here's the...
See what the standard says to see if we're factoring to understand factoring or just to find the zeros, because that'll tell us.
Do we have the,
It's up there. Solve quadratic equations in one variable by inspection, taking square roots, completing the square, the quadratic formula, and factoring. Okay.
That completing the square part really kind of bothers me. Because I've found no good reason to ever complete the square. I mean, maybe I understand the quadratic formula, but factoring, or to put it in vertex form,
That's about the only
there's a
reason
couple
I can-
formulas that you can do that would give you your, H and K. H is equal to negative B over 2A, and K is equal to C minus AH squared. And so if you're dealing with A times X minus H squared plus K, you take that value, plug it in there, take that value, plug it in there. And it's the same exact thing for vertex form. Problem is, now they have to memorize these 2 formulas, but completing the square, imagine if you don't have an equal sign, you gotta square one thing, put it outside,
Subtract,
double it,
yeah.
let's see.
but completing the square, that's the one thing maybe the only thing I've been really
Don't erase that 'cause I wanna
successful
look at it some more.
with the tiles.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yes.
That is the only
There's
thing that I
concrete
feel
for sure.
so comfortable with the tiles. And the kids, you know, I've had students in the past, they're like, all I do is think about making a square, and they get that.
Mm-hmm. I think too, it depends on where you start. Kids haven't had any experience with adding, subtracting, or multiplying polynomials up to this point, right? So are you gonna go back and do some lessons on those three things before we jump into factoring?
The only thing we did was multiplying, wasn't it?
Multiplying and then kind of combining like terms when we do equations, but nothing.
You know, the FOIL method.
Yeah. Did we do foil?
No.
Oh,
You're
okay.
not supposed to call it that.
What?
Foil is a bad
Not
word.
supposed to
Really?
use that
Yeah.
word.
Except our book says it.
I use the F word all the time.
Which one?
Well, that one as well. Fractions. is what
Fractions, good. If you're using the tiles to show them to multiply, the box method makes sense because it's such a connection between the concrete model and that representation,
Makes sense.
especially for,
Yeah, I haven't. I mean,
Bigger
I
concrete
seldom
kids.
use the algebra tiles, and so now when you mention that, I can see the correlation. I'm just more of a linear person, so if you're doing your math here, you go off here, do the box, come back.
yeah.
So how are we going to,
So can I just back up? So
Yeah.
you're saying that the kids that have come up through, they haven't had any practice in adding, subtracting, multiplying polynomials. So that's definitely something that we should probably start with.
Mm-hmm.
That we didn't probably start with. We didn't do adding and subtracting. We just bypassed that.
we did, we just
So
did
we should
multiplying.
probably do a day on adding and subtracting.
I'm not totally comfortable with using the tiles all the time. I know Heather will come in and teach it for us, but what if we really tried to use the tiles for the whole thing? And really give
What
them
if
that,
we made that a DC time thing?
If you teach the process before you give them the tiles, they will never understand the tiles.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do a DC time, but you would have to pre-teach that.
It's kind of like the integer chips
Yes.
and equations.
I mean, with your FOA kids, you did more of that type of thing,
Mhm.
didn't you?
Yeah, we never want to use the algebra tile, but we did lay out cups when solving equations, lay out integer chips, and
I
we
just
went.
wonder if they haven't had that, why not give them a really deeper understanding, and it may help us in the end.
Oh, it will help. Anytime they can touch something, they're gonna own it more.
So you're gonna come and,
Sure.
I mean, we have some here in the office. We could spend some.
Rosie has them right now.
Just
Well, we
kidding.
can do it online too. I mean, it's not the same thing, but Smartboard, if you type in under Smart
Yeah.
Tools or whatever,
you
they
get,
have
yeah,
algebra tiles.
and you can have
Mhm.
infinite cloning and stuff like that, on the smart board,
Right,
but,
we could do it up there, for sure.
Well, I'm saying if we were to learn right now on how to do it, we could do it.
That's. I
Or
think
we-
that's a good use of our time. Part
Well, I
of our time today.
well, I'd rather she come in on a
Model.
Monday, or any lunch, and,
Not
Not
C.
lunch.
I got Sal now.
yeah, not see lunch,
That's
but
exactly why I need
I
to
need
see
to
off
talk
as
to
well.
your family about that one.